The rock star Freddie Mercury died last night. He was 45 and had been lead singer with the group Queen. He'll be cremated at a private ceremony later this week.
When the world woke to the headline, Freddie Mercury dies at 45, no one imagined what was unfolding behind closed doors in those final 72 hours. As fans mourned outside Garden Lodge, something far more mysterious was happening inside London's most guarded walls. Invitations were whispered, not written. A secret list of 35 names. And instructions left by Freddie himself, sealed, signed, and obeyed without question. What could be so private that even some of Queen's closest friends weren't allowed to attend? Why did Freddie demand that one person, and one person only, would ever know where he truly rests? That November day wasn't just a funeral, it was a puzzle, one designed by Freddie Mercury himself. And tonight we're uncovering the 7 hidden truths about that farewell, the secret ceremony, the forbidden songs, the coded goodbye of a man who turned even death into art. It was the morning of November 27, 1991. Cold, gray, and silent. London seemed to hold its breath. Only a small convoy of black cars moved through the West London crematorium gates. Inside those cars were just 35 people. No media, no fans. Only the chosen few who'd received Freddie's secret invitation list. Among them were Elton John, Mary Austin, and the remaining members of Queen. They were greeted not by flowers or grand speeches, but by a white-robed priest reciting prayers in Avestan, the ancient language of Freddie's Parsi faith. The ritual, steeped in fire and purity, symbolized the soul's journey from darkness to light. It was quiet, reverent, and haunting, a sharp contrast to the man who had once commanded stadiums with thunderous energy. Yet this was Freddie's wish. His assistant Peter Freestone would later say, "He planned every detail. He wanted the world to know him for his music, not his death." Even the crematorium was chosen for its seclusion, with a private entrance secured weeks before his passing. No photographers, no interruptions, just stillness or love. When the priest's final words faded, Mary Austin stepped forward. She placed a single white rose atop the coffin and whispered something no one else heard. Those who saw it said, Freddie's farewell felt less like an ending, and more like a secret he had left behind for the living to uncover. No Bohemian Rhapsody, no We Are the Champions. Instead, the chapel filled with the soft, trembling voice of Aretha Franklin singing, "Precious Lord, take my hand." The song Freddie had once called his private prayer. It wasn't about fame, but faith, his quiet connection to something greater than himself. Next came Carole King's "You've Got a Friend." Many who attended said it was Mary Austin's request. She'd stood by Freddie from his first show to his final breath, and this was her message to him: "You'll never be alone." Then, in a breathtaking turn, the mourners heard Verdi's aria, "D'amor sulle rose," the same recording Freddie played over and over in his final weeks. The opera's words, "carried on the wings of love," echoed through the room, wrapping the grief in beauty. But one mystery lingers. According to one insider, after the service ended, a faint melody played. Freddie's voice humming something no one recognized. The tape has never surfaced. Some say it was an unfinished song. Others, a final message only a few were meant to hear. Whatever it was, it marked a shift in the room. The showman had spoken one last time, quietly yet louder than ever. After the service, Freddie's body was cremated in accordance with Zoroastrian tradition. What followed remains one of music's great unsolved mysteries. Freddie had written his instructions personally. "I do not want my resting place known. It must remain private forever." Only one person was entrusted with the urn, Mary Austin. Weeks later, she arrived at the crematorium to collect his ashes. Then she vanished. No one saw her again for days. When she finally reappeared, she said nothing about where she'd been. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some believed she buried him under the cherry tree in Garden Lodge. Others claimed the ashes were scattered in Zanzibar, Freddie's birthplace. One rumor even suggested Montreux, Switzerland, overlooking Lake Geneva, the last place he recorded. In 1999, fans discovered a plaque at Kensal Green Cemetery engraved with the letter M and the words, "To be closer to heaven." It was gone days later. Brian May later admitted, "Even we don't know where Freddie is. Only Mary knows, and she'll never tell." It's believed she carried out his wish sometime in early 1992 alone. No cameras, no witnesses, just a secret shared between two souls, one alive, one immortal. The morning after Freddie's death, Garden Lodge became a shrine. Fans from across the world flooded Logan Place with flowers. The piles grew higher by the hour, eventually blocking the iron gates. By the day of the funeral, there were enough blooms to fill several trucks, and that's exactly what happened. 5 hearses carried only flowers to the crematorium. But what happened after is the real story. Instead of letting them fade, Freddie's team had them delivered to AIDS wards across London. Every hospital received bouquets tagged only with 5 words: "Love from Freddie Mercury." Doctors later said the gesture lifted spirits during one of the darkest chapters of the AIDS crisis. Patients who'd grown up listening to Queen said it was as if Freddie was still speaking to them, still giving life, even after his death. Roger Taylor later recalled, "Freddie was never sentimental, but he cared deeply. That was his way of saying goodbye." The media never covered it. It wasn't meant for headlines, it was meant for hearts. In that moment, the man who had once sung to millions reached out to a few hundred suffering souls, quietly proving that even in death, compassion doesn't need applause. While the ceremony remained closed to the public, the world outside refused to accept exclusion. Rumors began circulating that fans who had seen Queen live might be allowed entry if they could prove it. Desperate admirers lined the streets near the crematorium, clutching ticket stubs and photographs, pleading for entry. Some slipped through the outer gate before security escorted them out, politely but firmly. Others simply stood in the rain, holding candles and singing, "We Are the Champions." Elton John later said, "You could hear them outside while we were inside. It felt like Freddie's voice was echoing through them." It was a surreal contrast and left a quiet chapel inside, a choir of mourning fans outside. The police cordoned off the area hours later, but by then, the crowd had swelled into the thousands. Some stayed all night outside Garden Lodge, leaving notes and rosaries along the wall. Freddie's lawyer would later confirm, he wanted peace, not spectacle. That's why the ceremony was invitation only. But that balance between privacy and the public's love would haunt the legacy of that day forever. Brian May, Roger Taylor, and John Deacon arrived together in the second car. There were no photographers, no handlers, no press releases. Just silence. They took their seats behind Freddie's family and stayed motionless through the entire service. No one spoke. No one performed. For a band known for breaking every rule, their restraint was almost unbearable. Brian would later recall, "It wasn't a funeral for Queen. It was for our friend. That's how he wanted it." Afterward, they quietly left through a side entrance, each heading home separately. For weeks, they didn't speak publicly or to each other. It wasn't until months later that Brian found the words, "We witnessed something we'll never talk about. Freddie wanted dignity. We gave it to him." Their silence was both grief and loyalty, a final encore of respect. And yet, while the band went dark, Freddie had already written his last act into motion, one that no one saw coming. The day before he died, Freddie made his last public statement. It was short, precise, and profoundly brave. Following the enormous conjecture in the press, "I wish to confirm that I have been tested HIV positive and have AIDS." He ended with hope. "My privacy has always been special to me, but now is the time for friends and fans around the world to join in the fight." It was his final gift to truth. In his will, he left clear instructions. No grave, no monument, no memorial. He feared it would become a pilgrimage site or worse, desecrated. He wanted his legacy in the air, not the earth. Mary Austin later said, "He wanted to disappear the same way he lived, dramatically, but with control." Even his final possessions, art, furniture, letters, were cataloged and distributed quietly. Only his piano, the one used to compose Bohemian Rhapsody, stayed where it always belonged, at Garden Lodge. Freddie didn't fear death. He feared being remembered for the wrong reasons. Not a single official photograph exists of Freddie Mercury's funeral. No press coverage, no leaked recordings, nothing. Yet, years later, whispers surfaced about security footage that had briefly captured the procession. A former crematorium worker claimed those tapes were immediately confiscated and destroyed by Queen's legal team. Others believe they're locked in the band's private archives, never to be seen. Why hide them? Because Freddie's will demanded it. He wanted no images of his coffin, no photos of grief to circulate endlessly. The only pictures he wanted the world to remember were of him alive, vibrant, loud, unstoppable. Peter Freestone once explained, "He controlled the image right to the end. Even in death, Freddie produced the moment." To this day, the only public evidence that his funeral even occurred are eyewitness accounts. No documents, no media, just memory, exactly as he wanted. 2 days before he died, Freddie handed Mary Austin a sealed envelope. He told her to open it only after his funeral. Inside, she found a short, handwritten note. "You stood by me when others didn't. When I'm gone, keep one secret, and keep it forever." She never revealed what that secret was. Not to Queen, not to the press, not even to her children. Many assume it refers to the ashes' location. Others believe it points to an unreleased recording, something Freddie left unfinished on purpose. When asked in 2013 whether she would ever reveal it, Mary replied softly, "No, because then it wouldn't be a secret anymore." Her loyalty has outlasted empires, interviews, and speculation. It is the final living thread of Freddie's mystery, one he designed to last longer than life itself. Freddie Mercury's funeral was unlike any the world had seen, not because of its grandeur, but because of its restraint. It wasn't a spectacle for cameras or fans. It was a ceremony built on faith, friendship, and secrecy. Every prayer, every flower, every silent glance carried meaning. Over 30 years later, fans still gather outside Garden Lodge each November, leaving notes, music sheets, and red roses. No official memorial stands. No statue marks his grave. Yet, his presence is everywhere. Brian May once said, "Freddie doesn't need a monument. The whole world sings his songs. Well, that's his monument." And maybe that's what Freddie wanted all along, to leave quietly, so his music could keep making noise forever. These were the 7 mysteries behind Freddie Mercury's secret farewell. Now we want to hear from you. Which part of his final story moved or surprised you most? If you believe Freddie's legend deserves to live on, in truth, mystery, and music, tap like, subscribe, and join the conversation below. Because even when the voice is gone, the echo never dies.